you already prompted my thinking, my mind to go back to the late, great Frank Blackman, one of the revered track and field coaches here in Barbados. I guess he's the one who, in your fraternity, would have been the standard as to the quality of coaching in Barbados. We know of his relationship with the outstanding Overdeli Thompson and a number of the other athletes. We hear about the Francises and the Mills coming out of Jamaica. We go into some other sports and talk basketball. We hear about Riley and Jackson and the likes. Why? Well, I shouldn't say why. Who? You've identified Mike Hesson. Who are or where are the great cricket coaches in the Caribbean?
Boy, you put me on the spot. I have not seen a really good cricket coach associated with West Indies cricket. Up to now, I've not seen anybody that I considered a really good coach.
But tell me something, though. There must be.
I'll take you back to when Bennett King was hailed as the new guru. Actually, one of the better coaches I've seen so far West Indies team was actually John Dyson. When Bennett King was around, we lost a match at Kensington within 3 days. It was a back-to-back match. So we had Barbados then going on to Antigua. And I remember quite clearly that we lost that match and Bennett King took the team out and ran them through the paces over the next 2 days. Really worked them extremely hard. This guy was mixing punishment with preparation. That is one of the fundamental feeling of coaching. You do not use your sport and your preparation as punishment. And so he does that, and they go into Antigua and have a worse match because he killed any possibility of a revival by running his team to the ground in Barbados as punishment. And from that point on, I don't care whatever else he did, I knew he was not a good coach. But people thought he was so good. People actually thought the punishment was merited because we think that if you fail, you know, a slave breaks the rule, you take him on a tree and you flog him. That's the mentality I saw in that style of coaching. It don't work. If it has success, very low rate of success. So we see these things and we actually like poor coaching. You see a guy having problems with a run-up in the middle of a test match, and you take him in the middle and pull out the tape and teach him how to run up and all kind of stuff. He is already doomed not to perform because the in competition is not necessarily the best place. It's not the best place for learning basic skills. He was either ready before the match or he wasn't ready. But don't take in the middle and try to coach it into the basics of his event or his activity. You're basically put that guy up to failure. So, sorry I had to cut you across like that. Yes, Fano, in my view, is the guru of coaching in the Caribbean. Stephen Francis. He's proven it now. Glenn Mills has been able to achieve wonders with Usain Bolt and a Usain Bolt camp. But before and after, his success is nothing to compare with Fano. Fano had a much longer and more varied level of success with far more different athletes as well. So I think that if you had to say who's the guru of coaching in the Caribbean, Stephen Francis.
But what do we learn from this, or what can we learn from this in terms of cricket? How do we borrow from this in terms of cricket? Because I think the whole thing that gave me some sleepless nights was the fact that there's this seemingly scientific approach and recognition of the science involved in track and field and some of the other Olympic sports. And cricket, I would describe it as more an emotionally based thing. For example, you know, one of my pet peeves. We look at Cornwall, for example, and assume that he's big, so he can't be any good. We forget the fact, and we don't even care that he's got over 300 first class wickets, bowling at the same people that the other slim people bowled at, totally disregarding reality in the science.
Yeah, I actually believe we don't really have a good scientific approach to our entire preparation and coaching. There have been improvements, but in general, we don't have a good basis. We don't select coaches on a scientific basis. We have to recognize that, and track and field makes it quite clear. They're coaches for different levels. So you're not going to take a high school coach and put him to coach your test team and say he's successful because he coached so much high school titles. You're not going to take a guy who's been into school sports and make him your basically your top level high performance coach. I mean, if he came up with that environment and went on, because coaching adults and coaching high performers is a totally different ball game than coaching school children and youth and juniors. So we have a lot of things mixed up. We don't have a scientific approach. We don't have a structured approach. It is, I know Philip like to go and say it's all emotional, but there's a bit of tradition within it, and there's a whole lot of ignorance. Because if you listen to a lot of our cricketers in particular, they will say, I had a problem, I went back to my high school coach and sorted it out. You hear athletes talk at the top level, you don't hear alien talks and say, I went back to whichever school to figure out my problem. You stay with Stephen Francis, he's the guru, he's the high performance coach. Nobody goes back to the primary school and the secondary school coaches to solve the problems. They stay basically with their high performance coaches. So there is a lot that we don't do. And a lot of it is because in Barbados in particular, and most of the Caribbean, most of our sport is absolutely amateur in basis and structure. And we have a lot of amateur practices. So we believe that amateur practices are the best practices. They're the most common practices. And we believe that they're the best practices. And sometimes we get a disconnect for what people do in high performance outside of Barbados. And we believe that we can't do it here because we interpret the sport and sports strictly from the amateur basis.